All right, in our last video, we added items to the cart, so let's go ahead and remove some items from this cart. How are we going to do that? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new method called remove cart. Remove from cart. We did add to cart, so let's do a remove from cart. Remove from cart. We're going to do the product index, and we're going to do that's all we're going to do, actually, the product index, because we're going to reference it from the main list. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to say we're going to, it's not pop. We're going to have it come off out of the array at the certain index. To do that, we're going to use something that we may not have talked about when it comes to arrays. It's called splice. I feel like it was in one of our videos, but I didn't focus on it. What I want to say is this dot cart items dot. So you can't use delete, you can't use anything like that. You use this word splice, which essentially says at this index, take one item out. Okay, so we can do that. In add to cart, we actually update the inner HTML. What we probably need to do, we don't want to have to like redo all of that. And instead, I think what we need to do is we need to update, create something called update cart. And what's update cart going to look like? It's actually this dot update cart. So we'll call update, we'll create a new function called update, update cart. And we'll do the exact same stuff that we did. This doc, we will do a for loop. And we'll paste that in. That should all work because we're within the object and we're doing lots of like this calls, so that should all still work. And this is actually part of update. My bad. Update cart. So then it rebuilds it, and then it calculates the total. So let's save that. Okay, so then so we need to do that after remove from cart, this dot update cart, and we need to do that with the add to cart, this dot update cart. So let's go ahead and refresh the whole thing. That's a lot of weird numbers, but we can figure that out later. All right, lots of socks. So we have all of that. Now let us add that remove code. And the way we're going to do that is that when it puts it into the list, what it should do, wait, is that total? That's update cart. Yeah, okay. we should put a little word that says remove. And we're going to make that a link. So it's going to save that, refresh it, see if it works. Remove. Okay. We could do this with an image. We could do it with all kinds of things. We're going to do it with this text right now just because it's going to make the most sense. We're going to put a link in there, ahref equals. Now, if you ever want to make, and we've kind of, I don't think we've actually done this because we've always used a button, and that button has had a function on it. You know, it's like on click, do this. One of the things you can do in HTML is you can actually create a link that uses just a hashtag. And then you would say on click equals, and then you would call your function. So in our case, our on click equals, and it's the same one that we used earlier to delete stuff. Where was that? My cart. We're going to remove from cart. On click. Remove from cart. What are we removing from the cart? And we are removing I, because that's the index. And I'll explain this in 1 second. Just to make sure it works. Let's see if this works. I have to do an end. Wait, A, yeah, so A, and then remove, and then /A. Okay, let's see what it looks like up here. Jeans, remove. Gone, total 0. Scarf, belt, remove the belt, and we're back down to the price of the scarf. Add dress, 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 dress. And then we remove, 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 and remove, and we're back to 0, 0. Seems like something we probably want to do for each thing that's at the beginning of the cart is that the inner HTML always starts with h2 cart, just to give it some difference. Refresh my cart. Well, that was pretty dumb of me, but yeah. And it's back. Okay, so what is going on here? Where'd all this? That's super weird. How many times have you been seeing all this good time stuff? Great. All right. Great. Okay. So as let's explain what is going on here. And in our object cart, we have several different methods: add to cart, remove from cart, update cart. Should probably be called update cart display, calculate total, and then the properties are the cart items. And I have this display HTML, but we're getting rid of that. And I have a constructor that just builds it by its name. We probably don't even really need that, but it's there. Okay, so then we also have a class called product. And so the products, we create them. you know, and they exist as products. They exist as individual pieces, and then we put them to an array by creating the array and then adding them to the array, and then we use that array to make our list. So this is the first time in our code that the end user is actually seeing anything like this. Now, of course, I would dress this up. Like I would make sure the add item buttons are, or add to cart, you know, are definitely lined up or something like that. But for now, this could be fine. I'm actually going to change it from add item to add to cart just for the example. Okay, so as we loop through to create them onto the screen, we create a div tag that will then contain the name and the price, as well as we create a button that gets added to that div tag, and then that whole div tag gets added to the product array area, right? And we make sure that our button has a particular call. It calls the object my cart, and then it calls the method. This is super common when it comes to coding, and it might not be you're the one who's coding it, but you might be reading something, reading someone's code or looking at it, and you notice that there's a word before the function. You're like, why is there a my cart before the add to cart? I could just make add to cart, and you could, but it's because there's an object somewhere in there. And so that we add the function of the button, add the current name and the price, and then we add it all together, right? And that's really it. And then all the magic happens in the functions within here, like add to cart. Okay. Put the item that we're adding into an array within the cart, and then update the cart display. Remove it from the cart, pull it out of the cart, and then update the cart display. And then here's update the cart display, which is we're going to just run through everything in the cart list and update the HTML for that. And then here's calculate total. We'll go through the whole list and we'll figure out how much everything costs. So that is one relatively complicated example for our for objects. It doesn't seem like objects are easier, but I think objects are way easier. I'm actually going to, just for fun, make all of this match because it's going to drive me crazy if it doesn't. Now when I run it, and I go add to cart, there it is. Okay. Great. And it says add to cart there. Okay, so this is the real basics of a front end using objects. Like I said, it seems like it's more complicated. It's actually kind of nice because you can have multiple pages now that have products or a cart, and you could put those all in. And what's even more interesting that we're not going to talk about this week is the idea that we can take a JSON file, which is the JavaScript object notation. We've looked at JSON, we've looked at object notation before. We can basically import that, run a loop on that, create objects out of that, and then from those objects create things like the products, or create things like the buttons, or create and add all this stuff. So we can actually take someone else's data, pull it in, create an interface, and then have it be actually interactive. All right, so let's get to the assignment and look at how we can create objects, and it'll be the same as before. I'm looking for this, and then here's some extra things you can do to get higher credit. Not higher credit, you know what I mean? Like try a little harder if you want to.